Tell me when.
All right, we are on air. Post. And when we post these things, it's not so easy sharing a group. Zeitgeist Melbourne.
Is this like last week where you talk and we're listening to you?
Yeah, that's exactly like last week.
Jeez,
all right, hello everyone, and welcome to Zeitgeist Melbourne Radio. This is episode 2. I'm Sonny.
And this is Chris. And if you want to catch up with us in real life, you can come to one of our meetups. But also today it's a live radio show, so you can come in on Facebook. You can come in through Spreaker, or you can call in our hotline number, which is 90287805, which will be great. And we're going to talk about economics today, and we're also going to talk about, well, we might even do a bit of Q&A. So anyone out there who wants to do a little bit of Q&A, I think we should be able to handle most of the questions. So ring in. Fantastic.
Yes, and right now I'm in the process of sharing it to like 3 places on Facebook, which we have done. And here we are. Today we'll be talking about economics. A sort of all-pervasive general topic that affects all our lives, and most people on the street, I would say, don't think about it deeply enough. Not that we have thought about it to all great depths or that we are economists, but we can hopefully give you a few insights.
Well, I know how to count, Sonny, and I also know how to use a calculator. So, economics, you don't need a PhD to work out how fucked your country is and how fucked every other country is. Full stop.
Let's start. Let me start by telling a bit of a story. You know, once upon a time, we had this thing called feudalism in Europe.
Oh, okay. Just before we start with the story, I'd like to just let you know that it's the 27th today, and according to everyone on YouTube, tomorrow is the global meltdown. I just want to put that out there. So when it happens tomorrow, they go, that was interesting.
We saw it here first.
Yeah, so, you know, when you look outside and it's the global economic apocalypse, you can look back and say, hey, maybe these guys, maybe they know what they're talking about. Or maybe they don't.
See, Chris, I got to pick your mind on that. But anyway, let's attempt an introduction, and we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. As I said, once upon a time in the land of Europe,
sounds like Oz.
We had the end of the Roman Empire, followed by the reign of the Church, the Middle Ages, and so on. And at that point in time, we had, a very, very long period, over 1,000 years, of feudalism. Mm-hmm. The idea was that you had basically a small group of people that told everybody we had the divine right to rule. Mm-hmm. They were anointed by the Pope. The Pope sent some oil. And they just, all the serfs, all the normal people, everyone except the royalty, mm-hmm. or the nobles, mm-hmm. basically farmed the land and gave a percentage of the income to the lord or the noble. Mm-hmm. And so it was a state of a few living in luxury and 99% in total slavery.
And you know why this is, Sonny? Because they had the 3 Gs: guns, gold, and God. Sounds very right wing. That's where we're.
They didn't have the guns, Chris. But anyway.
Well, anyway.
So then this thing happened where you had a class of people that were the merchants that started connecting these various fiefdoms and doing trade from place to place. And all of a sudden, the people who used to make things like, I don't know, horseshoes and hammers and silk and rope, whatever, they were able to sell some of the surplus on this open market. Mm-hmm. Created by the traders, mm-hmm. For extra income, for mm-hmm. extra gold. And this system of trade was soon to take over. I mean, the traders had close to equal wealth of the nobles. Mm-hmm. And the opportunities for the average person, so anybody that had a real high level of skills, had, initially more countries and later on the whole world open as a market to their goods. And it brought a level of a higher economic equality. So capitalism actually, took it from a system where 0.5% lorded over everybody and everyone was a slave to 80% of people had the opportunity to make some money while maybe 10% lived okay and everyone else was a slave. So it was still a drastic improvement.
Yep.
In the condition of the world. But rather than see it as an evolution, this thing that kicked in the 1800s with, say, the British East India Company and global trade, and instead of seeing a normal, logical, progressive evolution, given that we're in a digital age, that we can distribute resources better, that we can take care of people's needs, public health, we're still being told by the authorities that the system of, turning everything into a commodity.
Oh, everything has a dollar now.
Everything has a dollar value. Every patch of land, every opinion, every, childcare, everything else. The way to do it is turn everything into an economy, sell it on an open market, and this is equivalent to freedom. This is equivalent to justice. And the very fact that, we have half the global population living in poverty, 1 billion living in abject poverty.
That's the middle class now.
They're paid what they deserve, because in capitalism everybody's paid what they deserve. And so that's basically, it's grown the system, which was a natural evolution and an improvement on the Middle Ages. It's not exactly a perfect system, since the only thing it improved on was the situation in the Middle Ages. Is now something of an entrenched institution. And we are told that
it's the only thing there is.
Yeah, and
I know we're going to talk about this later on, but I think later on we should talk about the pitfalls of capitalism, how it can't take us past a certain point. Like it's actually, we're there now anyway, but we've got to a point now where capitalism, we can see the holes in it, and if you speak to a right winger, or they contradict themselves so much, because they want a certain part of capitalism but they don't want the other. Well, they want free market. Well, if you're talking about free market, there's no such thing as free market, because it doesn't exist, and it can't exist.
Let's give you the example of those free markets that you felt over the last 20, 30 years. If you live in the West, you'll have noticed that a great majority of manufacturing jobs have moved towards some Asian country, be that China, India, Bangladesh. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is that the companies, they function on profit. So it's not
ever expanding profit.
So the way that we've organized society is that most people are employed in corporations. These corporations are not there to serve any country, any community, or even produce any public good.
But
they're there to...
But you can't say corporations. Business in general, right, is all about profit. Now, with corporations, because they're any company listed on the stock market, it's about ever expanding profit. So they're going to make more money than what they did the year before. Small business can plod along making a certain percentage on profit. But corporations, because they have shareholders, they have to make an ever-expanding profit. So what they end up doing is they start playing the labour force of one country against the other. And one of the biggest pitfalls, which I see in capitalism, I was probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, is that if the people that you want to buy your goods don't have a job, how are they going to buy their freaking goods? I mean, how's that going to work?
Well, look, that is a big question. But let's rewind back and say
I'm getting a little bit ahead.
How the hell we got there? So
we listen to the politicians?
Basically, no. Well, we organized ourselves more and more and more into groups of people that produce, and those groups of people, back, say, before the First and Second World War, national-owned enterprises produced a great deal of goods for the benefit of the nation. We've had a process of more and more privatization, meaning the wealth was out of public hands. Now, public hands was generally less efficient, but more morally directed towards some kind of objective public good, sort of more bureaucratically wasteful, towards a system where you have investors who find people that are going to organize and run companies for maximum return on investment. So if, let's say, you are a chemist and a biologist and you like to make drugs that help people, they're going to sit you down and say, well, what is your plan to turn our $1 million into $10 million in the next 5 years? And so the sort of natural course of human organization of trade is simply that capital and resources are going behind projects that are entirely oriented about making more and more capital, about making more and more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so without the governments necessarily stopping it, the logic follows that, a car company is going to try to make maximum humanly possible profits. And it's going to cut those edges. Look, they make the cars out of, cardboard, if that was not against some regulation.
Yes.
At the end of the day, one of the most obvious spots where you can make more profit is you could save money on wages.
Yes, that's right.
And the wages in the Western countries have been improving and improving and improving, thanks to many social movements and thanks to the unions. And so the wages in the West were, tens of times higher than wages in what we call the third world.
Yeah, but after they already automated the crap out of the industry. I mean, there's not many people that take to make a car now. It's pretty automated.
Not anymore. But there's a whole lot of people it takes to make a shirt, though. Even though the sewing of it is automated, it takes a whole lot of people to make textiles and things like that. And so what happened was that those jobs flooded overseas, and
no regulation, no EPA, no minimum wage,
and
no standard.
And so companies save money on workers, they save money on environmental regulations, and then you have basically these bodies like the World Bank, the World Trade Organization. They go to third world countries and say, we're here for your development, for your help. And the only thing they focus on is building that infrastructure for global trade.
Yes, that's true.
So, yeah, as a country, you should invest in subsidizing everyone that's going to make shipping for you to be our factory so we can ship all around the world. We should invest in ports. We should invest in railways to get raw materials to all our factories and so on and so on. So practically all the world was subjugated to this grand plan of, corporations to make ever larger profits. And no grand surprise, a great deal of economic development, more money flowing through the economy, more buildings and concrete structures coming up out of the ground. But still, over the last 30 years, with this increased globalization, we've had a steady increase in the disparity between the rich and the poor. Rich and the poor individuals inside rich countries, rich and poor individuals inside poor countries, rich and poor countries, rich and poor companies, rich and poor businesses.
No such thing as a poor company, mate.
Well, they're rich until they go bust, basically. Because they just take on more and more debt and more debt.
That's right. It's called bankruptcy, mate. It's not
They're never poor.
That's right. Only a Jewish company runs poor.
So, here we are. It's 2015. And these trends are coming to a kind of logical conclusion. I mean, we look around, we're one of the richest countries in the world. And so we're only seeing the effects a little bit now. Most people that have jobs have some kind of service sector jobs. They're part-time, semi-casual customer service relations, admin, office. But, very few people anymore here that we know make stuff.
Yeah, but see, we got back to no one's got a job. Well, no one has job security anymore. And if you're going to go for a loan in a bank, the first thing they want to know is job security. Who do you work for? How long you been working there for? Second thing they want to know is, well, number one is they want, that's what the bank wants to get a loan. But we're finding more and more, and if I look overseas, because I just come back from overseas, that most people overseas, well, when I was in Italy and Europe, are working part-time. And they're working 2 or 3 jobs part-time to make ends meet, pay for the fuel, pay for the bills, and if their car or scooter or whatever it is breaks down, they've got to go and get a 4th job to pay that off, because they just don't have steady flow income. It just doesn't exist anymore. And what's also happening, I've noticed this a lot, and I think they're picking up the Uber model. I think what we're going to see in the future is like when a job will be placed in an agency, and it will say, look, lawn mowing, $100 an hour, say, or $100 whatever. You go, oh, geez, I can do that. That's an easy job. $100 sounds good. But what you do is then you bid for the job, and you're bidding down on the job until you get to a point where your bid is so low, $10, and there's ever desperate who's got carrying more debt than anyone else, says, I'll work for $10, even though it started at 100, I'll take that job. So I think in the future you're going to start seeing jobs advertised at a high rate. And what people will do is bid down on those jobs until they get it.
And look, it's a race, this notion of a race to the bottom. And I mean, Uber model, look, on one hand, in a really successful economy, let's say everybody's got jobs. Very few people sitting around. Oh, sure, a kind of peer-to-peer system where we ride share, it's like an open source taxi driving thing. That's going to be great, Look, but that's like you're talking about Australia in the 70s when there was more jobs than people to fill them. Right? Yeah. So companies were actually putting the price of labour up to grab that skilled labour that they needed in their factory. But those days are gone, and with an ever-expanding population plus automation, those days are so far gone. It's like a bad memory. Yeah. So we invite you to think, sure, Uber, again, Australian economy is successful enough that, you want to take an Uber ride to the city from here, it's half an hour ride, the dude's probably going to make $25, $50 an hour, he can make a living. Think about Uber in Greece, where there is 1 million young people sitting on their bums willing to do anything. That ride is going to be racing as close to zero as humanly possible. I mean, in a way, a system where market decides how much your time is worth is a system that isn't reliably going to take care of your basic human needs. It basically doesn't give a shit about your need for a roof over your head or food at your table or shelter or whatever. It's a system where there's a game, and sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. When you're behind, you can die.
But it's like any business. I mean, if you're running your business legit and you had all the insurance and you had all the new car, new insurance, good insurance, the whole lot, and if you follow all the rules, your hourly rate, or whatever it may be, your labour output is going to be a lot higher than someone who's cutting corners, right? There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah.
So someone like, let's say, using Uber as an example, let's say you were not in a car, you're on a motorbike, so your registration's half, you weren't paying insurance, you were, running this thing on an oily rag, of course you're going to outbid someone. There's no doubt about it. But that's where we're heading. It's a race to the bottom. You're right. It's a race to the bottom. So, just in case anyone didn't get it, you can ring our hotline number, because we're waiting for someone to ring through, and it's 039 028 7805. And we're also waiting for people to come across on Facebook so they can tell us.
They can
tell us what a bunch of assholes we are.
Yes. Well, DJ Console, I'm managing the screen now so we can have Facebook open at the same time, but I was on the continuing topic of economics. I mean, maybe we should talk a little bit about how, well, a lot of smart people have been basically predicting a financial meltdown ever since about 2009.
Well, they had it right by 2008.
Well, look, ever since the original meltdown was allegedly handled, and handled terribly. I mean, in effect, what we had was a bunch of big banks that got into too much debt. They were leveraged too much.
And because the banks didn't trust one another with how much debt they were carrying, they wouldn't lend between banks. And remember, 2008 was a drop in the puddle because we're talking about one bank. One bank.
Yeah.
So, now we're talking about all the banks.
Yeah. So, in short, what happened was there was this bankruptcy on the cards. And instead of letting financial institutions that had far too much debt for the assets that they owned, instead of letting them go down,
they pumped them back up. And they guaranteed a lot of their debts. Which basically meant that in the very near future, a bigger collapse was considered to be inevitable. Mm-hmm. Because when you get into a situation where most of your big financial institutions owe or are exposed in terms of risk with all the derivatives, credit default swaps, and so on. Oh, you're talking about banks now. Okay,
yeah.
Yep.
Investment banks, hedge funds, and banks. When on average they're leveraged like 50 to 1, meaning they have 50 times more debt than assets.
And that's on the books.
That's on the books. There's all kind of off-balance sheet,
they're off the books
off-balance sheet liabilities. It's simply, a house of cards waiting to fall.
Well, I'll tell you something now. I just heard the other day that Deutsche Bank in Germany has $78 trillion in derivatives. Now, the GDP output of this planet, as far as I know, this is the maximum output in 1 year is 50.
Right.
So how does one bank have 78 trillion? How does that work? I mean, if that goes under, that's going to drag Europe and all of us under. Because you're not going to be able to recover from that. And if you're wondering what a derivative is, think of a car that's 30 years old, right? The wheels are flat, the engine's broken. It's a car, but it's not a car, because you can't drive it anywhere. Now, what we do is we get this car and we value at it. What would be the value of that car, Sonny?
Well,
about $100?
Yeah.
Well, if I was at Lehman Brothers and I had that car on my books, I'd value that at $2.6 million, like I would a Ferrari. So that's what we mean by derivatives. These things are overvalued garbage.
Let me give you an example, a real-world example of a derivative, right? A real-world example is I will buy Apple stock for $20 a share anytime from you for the next 2 years. And let's say it's at $15 a share at the moment.
Nice.
So, I could sign this contract, and I could say it's up to a volume of a certain. So it's a bet on a future event. So that contract there, that I'm willing to buy something at a certain price at a given time in the future, constitutes me betting that the price is going to, for example, go low and not high. And that piece of paper with that bet on it now is worth millions of dollars. The trouble is, if I tell you, Chris, hey man, I bet you $19 million that Barcelona is going to score more than 3 goals tomorrow, and we shake on it, I can't pay you that fucking debt. And imagine banks, what they do. Maybe they can pay one, but they have 28,000 such contracts.
Yeah, but you can also remember, Sonny, I think you're there, but you're not there. A derivative is like, if we get back to that car analogy, right?
Yeah.
You're valuing something that's worth nothing, and you're saying it's worth 400 times what it is. And then you go to the federal bank, and you say, I need to borrow this much money. And they go, well, what have you got? What do you have to put up for this? And you go, I got this Ferrari. Well, it's not. It's a bloody 30-year-old Mazda with flat tyres. But you valued it as a Ferrari. So they lend you the money for that. That's a derivative. So eventually when someone says, well, we're ready to collect. I want that Ferrari.
Yep. And
you got a Mazda.
It's like I bet you the $19 million, and then we have a bet paper, and I sell the bet paper for $100,000 to someone else. They come back to me a year later, like, I've got this bet paper here, which says you're going to pay $19 million if Barcelona.
That's right. Hedge.
And I'll say, hey man, that's great. I don't even have 19,000.
Do you know that's what the mafia used to do? They used to get a bar, right? And
Yeah.
they'd run the bar as take over the business and run the bar, and then they would go to all their suppliers and go, we want thousands of dollars worth of grog, and we want thousands of dollars worth of this, and thousands of dollars, and they just get this stuff in. And at the back door, they'd be selling for half the price in cash and put in their pocket. Anyway, when the creditors come knocking on the door, where's our money? Oh, there's no one here. It's empty. It's gone. That's how they used to do it. They used to run the debts, and if they didn't supply, they get another supplier, and they pay a little bit, and then they get them to supply, and they just keep running up the tabs.
Wow.
So it's. I mean, if it's not criminal,
It's an age-old model, clearly.
obviously
It's an age-old model. It's got in the fine Italian tradition of Charles Ponzi.
That's a Ponzi scheme. There's no doubt about that. But anyway, so what we have now is we have companies in the US, not just banks, but companies, because they're running at zero interest, their lend rate out of the Fed. We're finding companies now are borrowing money from the Fed, and they're buying their own shares to prop themselves up. So they're buying shares on the market, and of course their share price is moving up, and the company's going, we're profiting, we're making money. Of course, as if you're on the board, obviously your CEO and the rest of the board and the shareholders are getting a dividend or getting bonuses and shit. Yeah. And the worst thing is you have a look at all these companies in the US. What's the quickest and easiest way to make a profit in these companies? Well, you and me as rational people would think, we get contracts and we employ more people and we manufacture more goods. That would be the way you'd think. But oh no. What you do is you sack 25,000 workers and then you don't have to pay wages to them. Whoa, profits are up. But how long can that go on for? Are you going to start sacking workers that don't exist? I mean, is that what we're going to do? We're going to go negative to make profits? But all this has to come to an end because you can't keep sacking. You can't keep buying. And I know, look, in America it's disgusting. Well, I'm not going to say just America because other countries do it as well. But they've got, like in America, they've got the plunge protection team. Do you know what they are, Sonny?
I've heard of that.
That's the Fed. It's a division of the federal the federal bank over there, the Federal Reserve Bank. And what they do is, as the share market looks like it's taken a nosedive, what these guys do is they come in with money and they buy up shares. So the Federal Reserve Bank is buying up shares in the US stock market to stop the dramatic fall, just to get it to level out. And of course, because the Fed is, there's a lot of algorithms and computers making buys and sells on stock, people jump in or corporations jump in and they start to push the market back up. But as soon as it takes a plunge again, more money at zero interest. That's probably half the reason why the Fed will never raise the Fed will never raise interest rates, because I don't think they know how much money they got out there. And if you raise the interest rates, that money has to come back. Yeah. Or that interest has to come back. So you're looking at a Ponzi scheme, mate, played on a large scale.
I mean, with this nobody really, even the idea of capitalism, and we've bashed it a little bit, but even the idea of capitalism, that has within it some concepts that, we have price discovery.
That doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist anymore.
That might have existed in the 50s and the 60s. That doesn't exist anymore. That's
because
gone. How do you discover a price when it's totally manipulated?
Exactly.
There is no price discovery. And, we've even got today, I mean, we know that there's technology out there that could make a lot of big business, oil, gas, and electricity with solar and all the rest of it, that could make a lot of these industries redundant. But this technology is held by those energy companies, and it's held back from coming forward because they've got vested interests in their coal and their nuclear and all the rest of it. So not only is this suppressing everything, it's also suppressing technology. We're like held in a bubble. So we can't move forward. So, I mean, I know we could probably talk about this on a future show, but because of our patent system and vested interests, technology is being held back. We can't move forward in this society, this capitalist society, because of these companies. And I'll give you one little example. I worked for a company years ago as a contractor that made a product that it's a bit hard to say, but it was explained to me by the head engineer that once you started this thing up, this chemical, it was a ceramic fuel cell with a membrane in the middle. And once you started this thing up and you heated it up, it created power. And it didn't stop creating power. The company's called Ceramic Fuel Cells Technology. It's in Melbourne. And that company was being run by the government by CSIRO. It was funded. And then the government could not fund it anymore. They didn't want to take it commercial. They didn't want to get involved. They said, you have to find your own funding. Now, you think a company that's making a product like that would have every man and his dog screaming towards that, knowing that there was going to be a future in a ceramic fuel cell that would power itself with the same chemicals, recirculating them in the system through a membrane. Well, what ended up happening? Woodside Petroleum bought up the shares in that company. Do you think Woodside Petroleum, one of the biggest Australian petroleum industries, would want that to be out on the market? So that's just an example of technology that's out there that's been held back.
I mean, look, and then it just kind of also tells you the way the market system works, right? Somebody puts out a potentially viable energy technology. Let's say even, there's a 10% chance that this is going to be something major, that this is going to be a replacement for fossil fuels. Okay, you've got maybe a group of investors that might think, oh, well, look, this might be a good investment. There's a 10% chance. But they're bidding in the same market as oil companies. I mean, even the venture capital firms, maybe they have a couple $100 million to invest. They're bidding in the same market as oil companies, which have hundreds of billions of dollars, who are simply going to buy anything that even has the potential to put them out of business.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but also you've got in Australia, you've got the coal-fired power industry, right? That relic.
Yeah.
And what's happening here is every time someone puts solar on their roof, it's like acid to their business model because they've never had a competitor. They don't have competitors. But every time that company goes to the bank and says, we need money because we've got to upgrade this or we've got to fix that and we're going to do this and we want to do that, the bank's starting to scratch their head and go, but you're not expanding your customer base. You're actually losing it. You've got competition. We don't know if we want to invest these millions of dollars in your industry, which we can see in the future falling by the wayside. But so what they do is they threaten the state government and say, well, if you can't help us out with subsidising and helping us out with the market, we'll turn the power off. I mean, I reckon that's where it's going, because what you see happening now is the coal-fired industry here is starting to write the government's policies on solar. Like as in Victoria, we get 8 cents a kilowatt to put into the grid, but we could pay anything from 20 or 16 cents all the way through to 35 cents a kilowatt. So we're not getting dollar for dollar. I mean, if the world was a reasonable place, you get dollar for dollar. But the coal-fired industry is writing these policies.
I will be, I absolutely hate to be on the same side as the coal industry, but the way the market for energy works is that energy is worth a whole lot more at 7 p.m. at night than it is at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So to have the same what you pay would not necessarily be a fair system.
Let's say it's a 45-degree day, right? And the government or the energy company is charging you 35 cents a kilowatt to run your air conditioner. While it's a 35-degree day and your panels are sucking up the light, why aren't you getting 35 cents a kilowatt? You're not.
You're not.
You're exporting at 8 cents. And in Queensland, right, because they sold off all their coal industry and all the rest of it, they don't get anything when they push back into the grid. They get zero. They only get the money when they're using it. So if it's 35 cents a kilowatt and you're pumping out 5 kilowatts and you're meeting your energy needs at home, then obviously you're not paying anything. But anything you export back into the grid is zero. Why? Because the Queensland government sold off their power to private companies, and I think part of the agreement was that anyone who's producing power and putting it into the grid gets nothing.
That isn't fair.
That's
totally
just
unfair.
Disgusting.
Look, I just wanted to add that caveat because a lot of people think that a kilowatt of power is a kilowatt, but a kilowatt at a different time of the day is worth different amounts of money. Like,
but vastly different. Well, if that's in relation, then when they're charging 35 to 40 cents a kilowatt, why aren't you getting 35 to 40 cents a kilowatt for your? I mean, you don't even have to give them retail. Let's say it doesn't matter with a coal-fired power station. let's say it's punching out 20 cents a kilowatt, right? Wholesale. Then you got the retail side of it, right? Why aren't you even getting wholesale prices for your power?
No, that's pretty. Yeah,
it's disgusting. It's disgusting. But anyway, we'll get rid of that when I start up the solar-powered
political party.
Political party.
The solar party. I mean, and look, on the sort of on the scope of technologies, we are literally at a point where a good enough battery will completely end our need for any kind of diesel generators, coal power plants.
We're getting there. We're getting Earth batteries now they're big and a bit bulky, but they're cheap to make.
But picture this, right? This would change the world. Especially if you think that global warming is a real thing and that there's a potential chance of us being, under the oceans. Imagine that's real. They had the fucking Manhattan Project to blow the shit out of an Asian country, or to compete against Hitler or whatever. Got the smartest people in the world into a little off-road village for 3 years to crunch numbers until they made it. One company, Tesla's released a product. It's not great, but it takes us about halfway there in terms of what it costs and what it provides. It's a start, and out of a constellation of several hundred billionaires of this world, there's like one dude that I can name that is actually attempting to within the system, tackle the pressing problems of mankind. But what I think is, if we had some kind of a Manhattan Project to solve the energy storage problem, to solve the battery problem, within 2-3 years, that's it. We would be set. The energy future of planet Earth would be taken care of. There'd be no point to fight wars in the Middle East because all the cars could be now electric.
Well, see, the thing is, Sonny, why would you want to do that? I don't understand why you want to do that, because what happens is, in this country, is the government puts up the money for the research, right? They develop the research up to a point, and then they put it out there into the private dingo, and it either gets suppressed, or it kicks on a little bit, and then it gets shut down in the end because it gets pushed out of the market. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, and you have basically. I mean, there's only so many ways to skin a cat. There's only so many ways to make a wheel. There's only so many ways to make an energy, and with the patent system, yeah, sure, it's documented to some extent how it works, but what happens is once a company buys a patent, it can stop anyone and everyone else from making the same thing. And unfortunately, even within the innocuous realm of handheld devices, Apple and Samsung probably spend more money on corporate lawyers.
No, but on battery technology, they spend the most.
Oh, they spend the most. I was going to say, but they probably spend more money on suing each other over patent claims than they do actually developing new technology. Which,
I suppose,
Which I'll have to look this up. I've read this in an article, and we in the age of the internet, the articles are not all that well sourced, but I do believe it's true. It was something about patent wars in the 21st century, and which is fascinating. I mean, think about the notion that how taxing this systemic web of middlemen is on a company that's meant to develop technology. That's what they do. We do technology. We make newer, smarter, better, faster phones that has to spend more hustling to maintain its right to sell these products without being sued out of existence than it does on actually doing what it's meant to do. And it's a piece of evidence that really suggests
you can
that
find.
we don't live in an
if you
efficient
don't
system.
if you don't believe what we're saying, I mean, it's not hard to look this stuff up, because you can find that Chevron has a lot of patents on battery technology which they've bought from independent companies. I mean, back when GM built the EV1 the first electric car. That battery technology, I can't remember the name of the company that brought that out, but they brought when that was released, that battery technology was high tech, and as soon as they made the EV1, Chevron come in over the top and threw so much money at this guy to buy stuff up, and he thought, well, no, I'm going to make my money out of it first, and then I'll sell it off. Because he was a manufacturer, that was his job.
He made batteries.
Yeah, he made batteries. That was all he did. And he said, I don't need the money. I got plenty of money anyway. So the money's not an issue, but I want to manufacture. I want to manufacture in the US because, patriotism and all that shit. Anyway, that's what he wanted to do. And then Chevron patented some of their own battery technology. As far as this is the story coming from the man himself. And they tried to say that he stole it, and they were going to take him to court. Because he was selling these batteries to GM. And they're saying, well, they were their idea, and he's taken it. He copied them, and in the end, he gave up because he was an older man, and the pressure was getting too much. So he sold out to them. He sold out to Chevron, and that battery technology has then been sold off again, but it's being held by conglomerates. In the energy sector. Full stop.
I mean, the performance of EV1, the range of the battery, the power per weight output.
This is 1992, I think.
Yeah, it probably took a good 10 years for the rest of the market to catch up. And I mean, you can't hold this technology back indefinitely. But, think about what a decade is in terms of, how far we've come in terms of what a phone is in a decade, right? And as far as I know, there's patent wars in that. But can you imagine? I'm
a bit older than your average bloke, but my old boss had a mobile phone, and he used to have 8 batteries, and he would charge them all up at night, and during the day he would change a battery every hour, and then he would try and charge one battery in the car while he was going through the others, and that would see him through past the 8 hours if he went and worked overtime. 8 batteries he'd go through a day.
And when you think about how far we've come with mobile phones between the ones we got today and ones we had 10 years ago, can you just superimpose that kind of progress on electric cars?
Oh, it'd be incredible.
How come we didn't go from the EV1 to electric motorcycles, electric race cars, electric Formula Ones, which would be a logical trajectory, seeing what the phones did in the same time.
Do you know that Henry Ford's wife had an electric car? This is 1900. Start of the 1900s. She had an electric car. Why? Why would Henry, who's building petrol guzzlers, or almost kerosene guzzlers, but he was building petrol cars, and why was his wife an electric car? Because you had to get out and crank start a car. You had to get out and physically turn it over with your hand. They didn't have starter motors, right? And he couldn't get his wife to hand start a car, so he thought, I'll buy my wife one of these electric cars. And she drove that. And these electric cars look like horseless carriages. I mean, they look like coaches, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But I heard a guy on the radio talking about these electric cars. And I thought, you probably drive 5 miles down the road and the batteries are flat. Well, believe it or not, the speed of the car was limited to about 60 kilometres an hour.
Wow.
But this thing could drive, this is early 1900s, I fell out of my chair when I heard it, could do 100 miles at 60 kilometres an hour. This is turn of the century stuff. Now, I'm going to chase that up because I fell over. I couldn't believe it. Imagine if we kept up with that technology today. These cars would be flying.
Ford wife.
Oh, here we go. Sonny's on the computer. Mr. Google. He's going to find out.
Okay, yeah. CleanTechnica.com. Henry's wife's Ford wouldn't drive a Ford Model T, kept her electric car. Wow. It's 1914 Detroit Electric. That was the name of the car she drove. The Detroit models could run 80 miles on a single charge.
80 miles.
With a top speed of 20 miles per hour.
Sorry, I'm a little bit out.
But
Henry...
Wow.
All right, so if we kept on with that... But that was... When I was talking...
1914.
Yeah, but when I was talking about an electric car... I mean, she drove an electric car. There's no doubt. But I was told the technology back then got it up to 60 kilometres an hour, right? Which would be, 45 miles an hour?
Yeah.
And being 200 miles. Or 100 miles.
Well, look, it was
100 miles.
We
So
got 80 on this.
So 80.
That's
See?
still look.
That's all day driving. That's all day.
That's
driving.
100 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. 100 years ago. If we had some impetus.
Some people don't do 80 miles today in a car a day.
I don't. So, the long story short is, you could get completely logically rational and then think of it in terms of market operation. You can get conspiratorial and start looking into a lot of deaths of inventors, which honestly...
We've already done that.
We've already done that. I mean, if you invent something that threatens to shift the paradigm of the energy industry, your odds of dying increase dramatically.
Well, all I can say is, you don't want to die? Open source, baby.
Now, it's very possible to explain the world, without any kind of allegation of cartels killing people to maintain their presence. But you just do see that. I mean, you do see in terms of quantum shift technologies like cars, car industry is one of the biggest in the world. Airplanes. I mean, if you look at, just Google SR-71. That plane was designed in 1958.
Yeah, late 40s. It was started on the board.
And I mean, if you look at that looks 15 times more advanced than a Boeing.
But it looks high tech today.
Yeah,
looks even more high tech than to some of today's planes.
It looks more high tech than anything we're flying as civilians. Which kind of and the speeds that it achieves again are
nothing superseded it.
Yeah.
No, only the space shuttle. But that's not a jet. That's a rocket.
So what you're looking at, though, is for many different reasons, a world whose development, in terms of technologies that could drastically improve the standard of living that we have and make the world a more equal place, it's a stunted world. And why not develop technology that replaces cars or generates power so much more cheaply? Because
it interferes with the profit.
It's not just profit. Even the nation, you have a grand union of nation states and corporations. You've got the oil companies that want to keep their profits going, and you have the global geopolitics where control of oil is power. And
we can see that now.
You basically look at what happens to countries that have a lot of oil and have any disagreement with, say, NATO countries or the US.
Corporations.
They run into big problems.
Of course they do.
Iraq, Libya.
I mean, look, if you can't buy or threaten, as a corporation, a country to take their oil or take over their oil or buy their oil or whatever it may be, then your last resort is to go to the government and get the army to go down there and do it. I mean, because that's been going on in Britain, France, America. That's been going on for hundreds of years.
And just to kind of go back to the topic of economics and capitalism, people out there should know that there's more money made speculating on oil than finding oil. So, in other words, there's more money in betting on the future price of oil than there is in actually owning oil. Which is why and how the Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Emirate regime stay in power. There are a great deal of hedge funds, energy speculators, and U.S. foreign policy interests that need a price of oil to reach a certain level at certain times of the year that doesn't suit their geopolitical enemies, that they can extract money out of the market for. And any regime that plays along with that can even take their money, can even take the profits from their own sales of oil, as long as they follow the dictates of how much supply goes into the global market.
Well, you're looking at it right now where the Saudis are pushing the price down by producing more and more oil, and they're pushing out all the other players in the market. The Shell oil stuff, they're pushing out the Northern Sea oil.
They're pushing out the Russians.
Yeah, when
the
the oil,
Russian economy.
when the oil cost too much to produce, those industries fall on their ass, and all those shale oil gas thingos, they're all coming up to the end of their lifespan. As far as unless they're getting $100 a barrel, they can't operate. Yeah. And the Saudis, as soon as they push them out, like the Japanese used to do, as soon as you push out your opposition, then you come in over the top and the prices go back up, and you've got no competition.
Yeah. And
that's capitalism, baby. That's how you do it. You push your market, you run your market into the ground.
And just a coincidence, I mean, Russia was in absolute ascendancy for 12 years running economically, but it's an oil-dependent economy. And just as U.S. and Russia start having disagreements over, the proxy wars in Libya and Syria, all of a sudden the Saudis drop the oil price to the point where the Russian economy is suffering.
Of course it is, but you've also got to understand this is all about pushing oil and gas into Europe from Russia. And America, well, I'm not going to say America, I'm going to say corporate America, doesn't want that. They're not making the same deals. The gas hubs in Greece and so what they're trying to do is they're trying to stop Russia from exporting their oil and gas. They want a piece of it. And the other thing Russia and China and other countries have been doing now, they're bypassing the US dollar. They're paying for their oil and gas in ruples or won or Australian dollars, whatever it may be. Then they're not changing it into American dollars and then back into they're not changing it in the reserve currency and then back into whatever the other currency is. So what you're seeing here is America as the middleman is missing out on their piece of the pie when energy gets transmitted from one end to the other. So that's why you're seeing this big upsurge in Ukraine, so the pipeline doesn't run through there. You're seeing a big upsurge in Syria, that's where another pipeline's running through, because they don't want Russia. They want to isolate Russia. They don't want Russia exporting. This is corporate. This isn't politicians, one party against the other or one army against the other. This is all about corporate capitalism. I even saw an interview, which I found really interesting, and you can download on the net, where they were talking to the industrial affairs in Greece, and they had an American diplomat. Now, he wasn't a congressman, he was a diplomat, but he also worked for one of the big oil and gas companies in the US, and he was saying that they wanted to build a gas hub in Greece, right? And Greece is going, yeah, well, we're broke. We'll take, we'll sign anything. We're ready to go. American gas and oil, Russian gas and oil, because Russia wants to build a hub in Greece as well. And this guy turned around in front of the camera, blatantly said, oh, no, you can't have the Russian gas hub, an oil hub here in Greece. It's either us or it's nothing. And that's what he said. It's either us or it's nothing. And the guy goes, well, we can't do that. That's anti-competitive. And he goes, well, that's the way it is. And I looked at that and I thought, God.
I heard the same thing on the Tarpley show. Which is, the
a good corporation doesn't want competition, Sonny.
It's kind of the holy alliance between the grand Fortune 100 corporations and say the few top Western governments with militaries to back them up. Because, you know what? If you could buy the shares of all those Russian companies on the open market, there wouldn't be a problem. Nobody would have an issue with Russia invading Ukraine. If you could go to Russia and buy their oil and buy their companies like you can in China, Russians would be great. They'd be a great people, a free people, a good people,
that's right.
Upstanding citizens. Putin would be really democratically elected, and
Putin's woken up to himself because he's pulling away from the Western banks and the Western economics, where China is being pushed into that direction for the last 15, 20 years.
Longer than that.
Yeah, probably longer than that. But now they're starting to scratch their head and go, my God, we're controlled. So and they're because a lot of their country's still controlled by their central planning. Yeah. And they're trying to also run a stock market, also trying to run capitalism. They're finding it very difficult to control these shareholders from offshore. No doubt about it.
It's And fundamentally, let's bring it back down to the ground level. Like, this whole free trade thing, do you really benefit? Like, if you're, let's say you want to buy a house in Australia, the fact that, you know, millions of all of these potential houses you could buy are open to investors that could buy as many houses as they want. That borrow money at next to no interest while you borrow it at 7%. They're open to Chinese investors that have made...
Can borrow at 1%?
They can borrow one that have made tens of millions and need somewhere to spend it. All of this greater amount of money chasing a smaller amount of assets blows up the house prices for us and makes it less affordable for the average guy.
Well, even the other side of that stick too. You can't... even when they release new land or new housing in any new area where the government's rezoned it for housing, they open it up in stages. So what they do is they restrict the amount of land by keeping, and that obviously keeps the price up because everyone wants to own a block of land. They don't open up the whole lot because then the prices would be cheaper.
To give the Australian government a little bit of credit, I happen to know that it's not 100% open season. The international investors are allowed to buy new properties. So it can be houses, apartments, whatever. But
Well, they're going through that because they have been buying old.
Yeah, so they've changed it now to new.
Well, I'll give you another prediction. The Australian property market's about to take a punch because the Chinese investors have now no longer can take money out of it because China's worried about capital fleeing China, right? So anyone who takes any more than $50,000 out of the country, they have to send a letter to central planning and ask for the money. So they can't just go buy an apartments now for $1 million or $500,000. It's $50,000 only. And if you're a factory and you want to invest in property over here in Melbourne, if you write them a letter and say, I'm building a warehouse so I can send my products over there to distribute them and sell them, that's fine. But as far as domestic property and apartments, I think it's pretty much all gone from China now.
Which is a good thing. Like, Aussies, people, no normal person benefits from high property prices. You have to, like, own 5 houses that are mostly paid off to get to a stage where these prices are something that's good for you. They basically make it less and less and less affordable to live. It's going back to the feudalism. Capitalism turning into feudalism and reaching a full cycle because we're reaching a stage where, because a smaller number of people earn more and more, only big money can chase assets that are rare, assets like land. Everybody can buy a phone, a bookshelf, a fucking car, but land, only fewer and fewer people. And you're getting to the point where, 1% are going to own all the land and everyone else is going to be their slave because they'll be paying rent. It'll be, the exact same system as that castle on the hill and all the servants out in the...
But this is what I mean. We could stop this tomorrow and it'd be really easy because the government could say, you know what? We're going to release 10,000 acres. We're going to subdivide it into certain size blocks. No middleman, no developer. Just bring in the contractors and set it up, and then open up all the land to all the people. Put a certain amount of public housing in there, probably 40%, 60% working class looking for a cheap block of land to build a house, and no restrictions on the type of house you can build either. I mean, if the government did that tomorrow, it would shut down a lot of these developers preying on the people. They don't put because the problem here in Melbourne is these developers don't put any money in for infrastructure. So no trains, no parks, no libraries, nothing. There's nothing there. These are just all about how many blocks, how small can we make them, and how many we can squeeze into the estate. And these are going to become slums. That's the only way to describe it. They'll become slum. Well, I mean, we got suburbs here in Australia now that don't have any parks in them, or they open up the park and then 12 months later they're selling off the land. It's disgusting.
Wow. So, look, that's just one little thing, and then also from the perspective of the average person, hey, like, would you like to borrow 100,000 to buy a house, or $1 million to buy a house in Berwick, for fuck's sake? I mean, I understand any kind of market, there is an inherent scarcity of land close to the CBD. You want a house in the city, you want an apartment in the city, a house in Richmond, it's going to go in the millions. It would, even in any kind of a fair system, fair market. But people are paying $500,000 to live out in the sticks, as you said, without a library, without a park for their kids, without a train, without anything. And they're, forced to take out 15 times what they make in a year to buy a house like that. And be in debt slavery for 30 years.
I suppose this is a bit late, but how does this reflect the Zeitgeist Movement? I thought we were going to do a little bit of compare here of what we're looking forward to.
Zeitgeist Movement has this general idea that we're going to have the way to replace the present system is a resource-based economy, and it comes from maybe there's no detailed plan about how to manage everything,
but there are goals. There are goals.
It comes from a fundamental understanding, though, that certain things are better off not being managed in terms of a market economy, not being auctioned off. And for instance, if we, organize ourselves into whatever blocks. You want to do states within the country, nation states, cities, councils. But if at some scale of maybe when you have 500,000 people, we say, look, we need to feed everybody. It's not, food shouldn't be something that you need to work for.
And same as a roof over your head. And an education.
We need to feed, house, and educate everybody. Well, okay, I would say literally you need to look into a systematic way to take care of basic human needs. It's the wife! Where the hell are ya?
Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up.
Yep. But if you look at the most organized, rational way to meet human needs, in some collective fashion, and then you can leave the rest of it to the market. I mean, I don't think, as a human being, you have a right to a Ferrari, a mansion, 3 mobile phones, or an Xbox. But I think you do have a right, to some food and a roof over your head. And if we, rather than have some kind of a convoluted means-tested Centrelink system where we shame every person whose skills are no longer relevant to the market at the present state, we just literally provided everybody
with a livable wage,
with enough to live on, and then distributed the luxury goods and all the fancy stuff in the way we do at the moment, that would be a first step. You're
talking about transition.
Yeah. I'd say the first step of the transition, and we'll have a radio show, not podcast, about how you transition from this kind of global capitalistic system and what you transition to. But I would say, with most left-wing-ish oriented people, and most people that value human life, generally wouldn't have a problem with a system that guarantees basic human needs. Yeah. And I would say that would be a priority over a free market, over the rights of property owners, over anything else. The rights of a human being to live. I think, we want a world where that is the first order, order of action. We human beings have a right to live, and we should all get together and make sure that we all can, live, breathe, eat, and sleep in a relatively comfortable fashion.
Why not? Anyway, the only way we're going to change this is with you, with us. The only person that can change this is the people out there who want to make a change for themselves. And I'm seeing a lot of positive out there. I'm seeing a lot of people bewildered by the price of a house, and they don't want to follow in their parents or their parents' parents. Got to buy a house, got to get a job, work real hard, pay off the debt, got to have this, got to have that. I'm seeing a lot of people go the opposite direction and say, you know what, it's unachievable, so I'm not going to participate in this aspirations of wealth or this mental illness, because that's pretty much what it is in the end. I mean, if the price of a house, if you do the figures, that you never pay it off until the day you retire, then what's the point of owning it? You just become a slave to the system. So I'm seeing positive signs. I'm seeing communities come together. I'm seeing communities grow food together and share. And I see good things happening. But the problem is, we've got the almighty TV set that tells us, consume mass quantities, and it will make you happy. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye from me, Chris.
Hey, Sonny.
Be
good, y'all.
Be good. Thank you.
I don't know where you...
Tell me when.
All right, we are on air. Post. And when we post these things, it's not so easy sharing a group. Zeitgeist Melbourne.
Just like last week where you talk and we're listening to you.
Yeah, that's exactly like last week.
Jeez,
all right, hello everyone, and welcome to Zeitgeist Melbourne Radio. This is episode 2. I'm Sonny.
And this is Chris. And if you want to catch up with us in real life, you can come to one of our meetups. But also today it's a live radio show, so you can come in on Facebook, you can come in through Spreaker, or you can call in our hotline number, which is 90287805, which will be great. And we're going to talk about economics today, and we're also going to talk about, we might even do a bit of Q&A. So anyone out there who wants to do a little bit of Q&A, I think we should be able to handle most of the questions. So ring in. Fantastic.
Yes, and right now I'm in the process of sharing it to like 3 places on Facebook, which we have done. And here we are. Today we'll be talking about economics. A sort of all-pervasive general topic that affects all our lives, and most people on the street, I would say, don't think about it deeply enough. Not that we have thought about it to all great depths or that we're economists, but we can hopefully give you a few insights.
Well, I know how to count, Sonny, and I also know how to use a calculator. So, economics, you don't need a PhD to work out how fucked your country is and how fucked every other country is. Full stop.
Let's start. Let me start by telling a bit of a story. Once upon a time, we had this thing called feudalism in Europe.
Oh, okay. Just before we start with the story, I'd like to just let you know that it's the 27th today, and according to everyone on YouTube, tomorrow is the global meltdown. I just want to put that out there. So when it happens tomorrow, they go, that was interesting.
They saw it here first.
Yeah, so, when you look outside and it's the global economic apocalypse, you can look back and say, hey, maybe these guys, maybe they know what they're talking about. Or maybe they don't.
See, Chris, I got to pick your mind on that. But anyway, let's attempt an introduction, and we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. As I said, once upon a time in the land of Europe,
sounds like Oz.
We were, we had the end of the Roman Empire, followed by the reign of the Church, the Middle Ages, and so on. At that point in time, we had, a very, very long period, over 1,000 years, of feudalism. Mm-hmm. The idea was that you had basically a small group of people that told everybody we had the divine right to rule. Mm-hmm. They were anointed by the Pope. The Pope sent some oil. And they just, all the serfs, all the normal people, everyone except the royalty, mm-hmm. or the nobles, mm-hmm. basically farmed the land and gave a percentage of the income to the lord or the noble. Mm-hmm. And so it was a state of a few living in luxury and, 99% in total slavery.
And you know why this is, Sonny? Because they had the 3 Gs. Guns, gold, and God. Sounds very right-wing. That's where we're...
They didn't have the guns, Chris, but anyway.
Well, anyway.
So, then this thing happened where you had a class of people that were the merchants that started connecting these various fiefdoms and doing trade from place to place. And all of a sudden, the people who used to make things like, I don't know, horseshoes and hammers and silk and rope, whatever, they were able to sell some of the surplus on this open market created by the traders for extra income, for extra gold. And this system of trade was soon to take over. I mean, the trader...
And I know we're going to talk about this later on, but I think later on we should talk about the pitfalls of capitalism, how it can't take us past a certain point. Like, it's actually, we're there now anyway, but we've got to a point now where capitalism, we can see the holes in it. And if you speak to a right winger, or they contradict themselves so much because they want a certain part of capitalism, but they don't want the other. Well, they want free market. Well, if you're talking about free market, there's no such thing as free market because it doesn't exist, and it can't exist.
Let's give you the example of those free markets that you felt over the last 20, 30 years. If you live in the West, you'll have noticed that a great majority of manufacturing jobs have moved towards some Asian country, be that China, India, Bangladesh. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is that the companies, they function on profit. So
but
it's not
ever expanding profit.
So the way that we've organized society is that most people are employed in corporations. These corporations are not there to serve any country, any community, or even produce any public good.
But
they're there to...
But you can't say corporations. Business in general, right, is all about profit. Now, with corporations, because they're any company listed on the stock market, it's about ever expanding profit. So they're going to make more money than what they did the year before. Small business can plod along making a certain percentage on profit. But corporations, because they have shareholders, they have to make an ever-expanding profit. So what they end up doing is they start playing the labour force of one country against the other. And one of the biggest pitfalls, which I see in capitalism, I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, is that if the people that you want to buy your goods don't have a job, how are they going to buy their freaking goods? I mean, how's that going to work?
Well, look, that is a big question. But let's rewind back and say
I'm getting a little bit ahead.
How the hell we got there? So
we listen to the politicians.
Basically, no. Well, we organized ourselves more and more and more into groups of people that produce, and those groups of people, back say before the First and Second World War, national-owned enterprises produced a great deal of goods for the benefit of the nation. We've had a process of more and more privatization, meaning the wealth was out of public hands. Now, public hands was generally less efficient, but more morally directed towards some kind of objective public good, sort of more bureaucratically wasteful, towards a system where you have investors who find people that are going to organize and run companies for maximum return on investment. So if, let's say, you are a chemist and a biologist and you like to make drugs that help people, they're going to sit you down and say, well, what is your plan to turn our $1 million into $10 million in the next 5 years? And so the sort of natural course of human organization of trade is simply that capital and resources are going behind projects that are entirely oriented about making more and more capital, about making more and more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so without the governments necessarily stopping it, the logic follows that, a car company is going to try to make maximum humanly possible profits. And it's going to cut those edges. Look, they make the cars out of, cardboard, if that was not against some regulation.
Yes.
At the end of the day, one of the most obvious spots where you can make more profit is you could save money on wages.
Yes, that's right.
And the wages in the Western countries had close to equal wealth of the nobles. And the opportunities for the average person, so anybody that had a real high level of skills, had, initially more countries and later on the whole world open as a market to their goods. And it brought a level of a higher economic equality. So capitalism actually, took it from a system where 0.5% lorded over everybody and everyone was a slave to 80% of people had the opportunity to make some money, while maybe 10% lived okay and everyone else was a slave. So it was still a drastic improvement in the condition of the world. But rather than see it as an evolution, this thing that kicked in the 1800s with, say, the British East India Company and, global trade and... instead of seeing a normal, logical, progressive evolution, given that we're in a digital age, that we can distribute resources better, that we can take care of people's needs, public health, we're still being told by the authorities that the system of, turning everything into a commodity.
Oh, everything has a dollar now.
Everything has a dollar value. Every patch of land, every opinion, every, childcare, everything else. The way to do it is turn everything into an economy, sell it on an open market, and this is equivalent to freedom. This is equivalent to justice. And the very fact that, we have half the global population living in poverty, 1 billion living in abject poverty.
That's the middle class now.
They're paid what they deserve, because in capitalism everybody's paid what they deserve. And so that's basically, it's grown the system, which was a natural evolution and an improvement on the Middle Ages. It's not exactly a perfect system, since the only thing it improved on was the situation in the Middle Ages. Is now something of an entrenched institution. And we are told that...
that's the only thing there is?
Yeah. And